Good morning. Welcome to the Bidders Conference for the Countywide CSE Collaborative. I'm just going to use acronyms, commercial sexual exploitation. We're going to talk a little bit about what that definition means in the context of this RFP as well. To start, I'm Ali Jerkovich. I'm the program manager for this RFP. I work in the Vulnerable Populations team for the Veteran Senior Human Services Levy. And if we want to start in the back with my colleagues to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Adam Schmidt. I'm the Veterans Seniors and Human Services Levy Community Liaison. Happy to be here today.
Hi, my name is Amy Ransom. I'm with the Veterans Seniors and Human Services Levy Performance Measurement and Evaluation team. Oh, we're doing it all.
Yep.
I'm Angela Dodge. I'm the Director of Operations at the Organization for Constitution.
Hi, I'm Leslie Benjoya, and I am now with Eileen's. We just got a new thing started in Suffolk County, so we're excited. I have little invitations for you guys to our open house. Just text me for the address.
Hello, I'm Shannon Price-Darby, and I work with Ali on the Vulnerable Populations team.
Hi everyone, my name is Sydney, and I'm the Sexual Assault Advocacy Coordinator at the Northwest Network of Bisexual, Trans, Lesbian, and Gay Survivors of Abuse.
Thank you all for being here. Just a little overview of what we're going to cover today. I'm going to walk up here because they're so far away. What is the Veteran Senior Human Services Levy? Most of the folks in the room have had conversations with me or have participated in some of the community planning sessions. So at this point, you've heard our speech about what we are trying to do, but I will be covering that again today for folks who are on the phone and folks who might be watching this later. We're going to talk about an overview of SS3A, the Strategy for Countywide CSE Case Management Collaborative, which is what's written in the implementation plan. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about the RFP itself and the way that it's the same, the way it's slightly different, and what the nuances are. Technical assistance for smaller community orgs, ZOOMGRANTS, how to use ZOOMGRANTS and how to apply, and then I'll answer any questions you have. Just as a note to start, during the RFP open process, our program staff cannot directly communicate with any members of the community who might be applying for funding. So any questions you might send me, I'm going to send you a pretty generic response back that says, look at ZOOMGRANTS. We're going to be answering questions and uploading them that way. So if you expect that and it's not as friendly as my normal communication, that is why. It's not because I don't appreciate all of you. So what is the Veteran Senior Human Services Levy? So it was passed by King County voters in 2017. The VSHSL is a 6-year property tax levy assessed at around $55 to $65 million annually. It replaces the former Veterans Human Services Levy and expanded on it. The implementation plan passed in 2018. And all of this was informed by continuous community engagement around, now that we have this funding, what are the investments we're going to make? What are the strategies we're going to employ? What are the focus areas and populations we want to be working with? Which is how it came down to veterans, service members, and their families, seniors identified in the levy as folks who are 55 and older, and vulnerable populations, which is what our team focuses on. And there are 5 result areas for the levy that you can see up here. We're going to talk about one of them when we get to this specific strategy area. Just for some context, the guiding principles of the levy and the reason we're doing this work is to promote belonging, promote connection, and one of the things that I've said a few times at planning sessions that I love about the levy is this concept of what can VSHSL do that no other funding stream can. And it's the idea is to connect programs, connect clients, and connect providers. Sort of create system access improvement overall. The overarching goal of the levy is to make sure that we are holding the principles of King County's equity and social justice framing at the forefront of everything that we do to ensure that all people, regardless of who they are and where they live, have the opportunity to thrive with full and equal access to opportunities, power, and resources. So what that means when we operationalize it in the community is we spend a lot of time talking with community and working in partnership with community to say, what does this look like in action for you and the folks you are trying to serve? Which is why our program staff in doing these investments has spent intentional time talking to folks actually doing the work and people actually affected by what we're trying to do to hold equity and social justice as the foundation of all of the work we're doing across the levy. So this specific strategy area falls under the result area of system access and improvement. And specifically, most of the gender-based violence investments fall under this idea of providing specialized case management and advocacy. So the programs in this strategy contribute to the community level effort to promote accessible, efficient, and effective human service systems. And this is where SS3A falls in underneath all of those. And again, this is just providing some like high frame context for where this falls and how it was developed and what it looks like in the actual implementation plan, and then moving forward into the development of the RFP itself. So this strategy, and this is from the implementation plan, is for a countywide CSE collaborative to promote increased geographic, cultural, and racial diversity in services, increased community understanding about the unique needs and diversity of experiences of adults with lived experience in the sex trades. And then these key target areas are called out specifically in the implementation plan of substance use treatment, housing stability, assessment for and provision of employment services, mental health treatment. And this part I want to just draw a note to is other priorities as identified by the collaborative. So while there are things written into the implementation plan, which is county code, about what we are trying to do, there is a lot of space, and the intent is that the collaborative itself will be framing these goals and in addition what they are responding to as a community need. So an overview of the RFP. I printed out copies of the RFP in case folks are like me and want to actually have it in front of you to be able to look through. It is all available on ZOOMGRANTS as well as all of the attachments that we'll be talking about. I wanted to start by talking a little bit about the definitions that are used in the RFP for some framing. So a collaborative, two or more parties working together toward a common goal. That seems pretty simple. The sex trades. So we use this term based off of the feedback we got from folks during our community listening sessions and when meeting with providers and folks who have lived experience in the sex trades to find a term that was more fully encompassing of folks' experiences and the services they were trying to receive. And so we wanted to be clear that it's activities such as, but not limited to, the following terms: sex work, prostitution, trafficking, commercial sexual exploitation, and sex exchange. This is not a catch-all for the phrase that, in the way that different people have identified and talked about, and so we just wanted to make an effort to provide a more inclusive terminology when talking about what we mean when we say CSE. And lived experience in the sex trades, people also have really different ways of self-identifying, and we want to honor that, and so that's why we're using this terminology, again, to make sure that we're being inclusive of people's experiences, because what we found is that folks wanted services regardless of how they identified or what their experience was. So you can see this in the RFP. We have goals and guiding principles, and these came out of the community planning sessions where folks asked for some set guidelines before the collaborative is formed around what it is we're all trying to do together. And in the planning sessions, a couple of things were addressed. The goals: promote a network of programs that respect the self-determination, agency, and dignity of people with lived experience in the sex trades, to enhance capacity building for partners that are providing culturally specific services, and to address gaps in services, both cultural as well as geographic, to serve the needs of communities across King County. And that number 3 is really important because that gets, again, to the what can VSHSL do that other funding streams might not be able to. So where are those gaps? And the guiding principles is respect, prioritize, and uplift people with lived experience in the sex trades as leaders and experts, promote unity and trust through a collaborative built on a set of common values that are politically and socially neutral, and commit to equity and social justice by promoting the needs of communities most marginalized by their identities within and outside of their lived experience in the sex trade. So those are the things that are sort of our North Star in guiding what the intent is of this RFP and of the collaborative itself. So, scope of work. This is the piece where we talk about what it is we're asking folks to apply for and to talk to us about what they would be doing. We also recognize that putting together a collaborative is a very unique idea, and so we are asking for ideas. We do know that the collaborative will be doing the heavy lifting of the work together to decide what the priorities will be, but we wanted to outline some of the scope of work that will help build that, that the collaborative will build on. So some key pieces: develop a countywide outreach and engagement strategy to serve adults with lived experience in the sex trades. Develop a countywide strategy to support immediate and long-term health needs of the community. Develop a countywide strategy to promote accessible services and other priorities as identified by the collaborative. And this is just a snapshot of the scope of work. For more information, you can read the full RFP again at ZOOMGRANTS. Two things to call out is we do have a focus population, which is adults with lived experience in the sex trades, particularly folks over the age of 24, because a lot of folks have cited a resource cliff, that there are services for youth, sometimes extended to 24, but after the age of 24, there's a lack of resources available for folks. The definition of adult is 18 and older, but we did want to call out that we are particularly interested in making sure that folks over that age have access to resources that they might not otherwise have access to. And then we identified 3 priority populations. And again, this came out of community engagement and also focusing on our goals and guiding principles. The priority populations are people of color, Native and Indigenous people, and the LGBTQ+ community. And this is a lot of information, I realize, to throw at you. There will be a time to ask questions, so if you don't mind holding on to them. Milestones and deliverables. So the first 6 months of the collaborative will be used to co-develop the operating principles of what it is the collaborative is trying to do, which includes, but is not limited to, creating a mission and vision statement. We know that's going to be a big piece of what the collaborative will be doing together, is to define for itself what the mission and vision is of that collaborative, again, holding true to the goals and guiding principles that we've laid out. Creating a set of clear goals. Develop and deploy a strategy for service model delivery, so executing some of that scope of work of providing services countywide, doing outreach and engagement strategies. Develop additional milestones for the first 6 months and for the anticipated rollout of services after they are designed. King County is going to directly contract with a facilitator whose contract period and scope of work will be defined by the collaborative in partnership. So essentially that's to say we're going to contract directly with someone to help facilitate the collaborative, but the job descriptions and the interview processes and the helping decide what their scope of work will be co-developed with the collaborative itself. Funding. So the total amount of funding for the program period of 2019 to 2023 is $1.79 million. We are providing up to $900,000 available per applicant for the program period of September 1st to December 31st. Essentially, that's to say you can apply for, as an individual organization, up to $900,000, and that will be negotiated during the contract period if you are awarded. I'm going to ask you to hold your question. Okay, Anjali. 2021 to 23 funding is contingent on approval for the King County Council budget and continued partnerships and provision of data on program performance and implementation. Eligibility. Nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations, tribes and tribal organizations, and public or governmental agencies serving communities in King County. And that's pretty standard across the levy. Specific to this RFP, applicants must also meet the following eligibility criteria: currently serve or meaningfully engage with people in the sex trades in King County, or have a clear plan to build capacity to provide eligible services outlined in the scope of work. So you might not currently be doing the work that we are hoping to see the collaborative do, but you have a plan to build capacity to do that. And currently or willingness to provide culturally specific supports or meaningfully partner with culturally specific providers or equivalent community-based entities. So you yourself might not be a culturally specific provider, but we do require that you are meaningfully partnering with other folks and are willing to provide those supports to people, particularly when we think about the priority populations identified and outlined in the RFP. Contract requirements. Because of the unique structure of the collaborative, and because we know a lot of the goals and outcomes will be developed by the collaborative in the first 6 months and ongoing, you're not required to submit a fully developed evaluation plan. Information about this is in the RFP. There will be evaluation requirements co-developed with funded programs though, and we just want to call that out, that there will be requirements for outcomes and evaluation. 2 things to know is client level data is something that will be happening at the county. There will be some programs and strategies specifically that might be exempt from client level data. And so that again will be a conversation we will be having with funded programs throughout the course of this process and in the contracting period. And there will be aggregate and narrative reports. And so this is all just an FYI, so you know this up front. Timeline. The RFP was released last Wednesday. Today is May 1st, and we are here at the Bidders Conference. The final day for small agencies to initiate requests for technical assistance will be 2 weeks before the close of the RFP. We're going to talk about what technical assistance looks like. The final day to submit questions on the ZOOMGRANTS portal is a week before the RFP closes, which is June 7th. So the RFP itself is open for a 6-week time period to hope that we're better supporting communities and programs to have the amount of time you need to thoughtfully engage with this process. The responses will be reviewed and rated in June. We might be doing interviews with applicants if we think it's necessary, again sometime in June. The notifications of awards and decisions will be July or August, and the anticipated start date would be September 1st, 2019. And all of this is subject to change. Applying. Submit proposals by 11:59 p.m. on June 7th. The complete submittals will include responses to summary questions, responses to the narrative questions, and a budget. Responses to summary questions are not scored. You will see that in the ZOOMGRANTS portal. The narrative questions and the budget are scored. We will talk about the scoring guidelines in a moment. And I want to call out that there is an attachment, attachment G, that we want to make sure that folks review and reference. It is a summary of the community listening sessions, and we do ask throughout the RFP to keep that process in mind, and we do a brief summary in the RFP itself of what came out of those listening sessions, but a full report and summary is attached, and so we want to make sure you know to look for it. It will be referenced regularly in the narrative questions and throughout the RFP, so you know what I'm talking about when you see that. Rating criteria. So this is high-level overview of the rating criteria. These specifics are relevant to the narrative questions, and you can see that in the RFP itself. Organizational background and experience, 25 points. Program model and collaboration, 25 points. Equity and social justice, 20 points. Budget and fiscal, 15 points. Data collection and evaluation, 5 points. Again, we are not asking you to have a fully developed evaluation plan, but we do want to know that you're being thoughtful of that process and have some ideas of what you might want an outcome to look like for a successful collaboration and this process. And interviews, if necessary, will be 5 points. The review panel itself is a panel of King County employees, community members, subject matter experts, and people with lived experience in the sex trades. Technical assistance. So free application support is available for small organizations, and that means it's fewer than 20 FTE, full-time employees, not individuals, but when you calculate the hours of your employees and divide it, if you have less than 20 people full-time on staff and less than $4 million operating budget in the prior fiscal year. And there is a document in ZOOMGRANTS that talks about how to contact the technical assistance providers. Qualifying organizations should contact them by May 31st. See attachment D. ZOOMGRANTS. is a really wonderful online portal that should hopefully make your lives a lot easier. All your applications can be filled out and submitted in ZOOMGRANTS. If there are updates, check regularly. We will also try to make sure that anyone who is in the portal currently gets an email, gets pinged. Questions today and those submitted in writing will also be uploaded and posted to ZOOMGRANTS, and again, an email will go out when that happens. We'll say we submitted questions from this period to this period. And that is the link, and you should have access to that in the PowerPoint as well as in the email communications we have sent out. If you have not received those, please make sure that you signed in today and we can be sure that you get that. All right, that was a lot of information. If you'd like me to go back to any slide, let me know. Questions? Angeli.
So in the meetings before, you had talked about if it was a collaborative that's already formed and applying, or
Yes.
one individual organization that would then create. I'm hearing that it's the latter.
Yes.
So are you hoping that there will be some sort of collaboration, or is it just individual agencies will then join this collaborative that y'all create?
It's a great question. So the way that we landed is that we will be funding up to 4 entities. Those entities then will form the collaborative itself.
Okay.
That came out of community planning sessions. And the intent is so that A, it makes it easier for providers in order to just apply as individuals, and B, the intent is that the goals and guiding principles will help drive what the foundation is of folks buying into the collaborative and the agencies that we contract with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Leslie.
So if we ask for a certain amount,
Mm-hmm.
is there a plan B? Is there a way to get a smaller amount, or is it just yes or no on whatever we ask for?
There will be negotiations in the contracting period, which is why we do an up to amount in the awarding process, so that we create as much flexibility as possible to negotiate with providers who are awarded funding.
Could I add a nuance
Yeah,
to that,
please.
which is that we cannot award more than people have asked for as a department-wide thing, but up to the amount or less in that negotiation. So just as a piece of information,
Yeah.
we can't award more than people have asked.
Tell us what you need to be successful. In this RFP, actually, we do have a caveat that we can increase or decrease the amount funded, written in. But don't undersell yourself. Tell us what you need to be successful to be a part of this collaborative, which again is why we've increased the cap to such a high amount. Cindy.
Sort of related, getting over a cold zone. So related to the idea of working collaboratively, if we already had ideas about certain partners that we would want to be working with in order to create, in order to provide support that we felt was holistic or that was reaching specific communities, are there strategies to do that, to be including other organizations or other partners in your application or naming them if you know that somebody else is also applying?
Yes, so there is a section, I'm going to answer part of that question and then I might have to think about the second part and get back to you. There's a section where we ask people to talk about, we have one narrative question that says, give us 2 examples at least of times where you've meaningfully partnered, particularly with culturally specific agencies. So that is a great place to call those partnerships out. In the budget, there is an option to write information around subcontracting if that is something you'd be interested in doing. But the idea, again, is to have 4 folks, sort of 4 agencies at these tables to make it a manageable collaborative and also to have a really meaningful partnership. But the intent is for the collaborative itself to say, these are the folks we want to partner with, this is the work we're going to be doing, this is how we would do it. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay. Did you grab that one too? We have a new guest. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Luke, and I work for the Lavender Rights Project. We do queer and trans legal services.
Thanks, welcome.
Just because this is something that, as a staff, I've seen come up, can you give us just a couple examples of maybe what a technical assistance helper could do? Because I feel like this could really benefit you if you don't have a grant writer or anything like that.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to repeat that question. Sorry for folks on the phone. If you can't hear, just ping us and one of my colleagues will see it. The question is to expand on what technical assistance providers can do. A technical assistance provider can help you navigate the ZOOMGRANTS portal. If they will have familiarity with the RFP itself, will have had conversations with me if they need clarification about what it is we are asking for. They will be able to help with things like providing a budget, being able to craft answers to questions, and sort of just provide the support that you might not have, like my colleague Adam is saying, if you don't have a grant writer or something similar. And again, in order to sort of show up for the equity and social justice values of supporting agencies, particularly smaller community-based agencies, to be successful in this process. Angelique?
I had a question about, where is it? The culturally specific services. I wrote it somewhere. Hold on just a second. What, can you just define what that looks like? So would it, could you define what you mean by that? And, I mean, I think I know, but just a little bit more definition.
Sure. I will answer part of that, and then we will flesh out an answer to that question so that folks will all have access to it on ZOOMGRANTS, because that's a really great question. When we talk about culturally specific providers, anyone who's providing services to a subset or a population, particularly those that have been marginalized by their experiences with their own identities, both as individuals and as folks with lived experience in the sex trades. That means a lot of different things. The sort of vague answer is that means a lot of different things to different programs, and I encourage programs to talk about what that means in the context of your work. But again, we will provide that's a really great question, so thank you for bringing that up, and we will flesh that out more. Any questions from folks on the phone?
I think just to be a little specific about that question,
Yeah.
I'd be curious in terms of something fleshed out if being by and for people in the sex trade was considered a culturally specific as opposed to a different identity-based group like LGBTQ specific or for communities of color, Black and Indigenous communities.
That's a great question. One of the key priorities of this work, and that's called out many times in the collaborative as well as in the request for proposal as well as the narrative questions, get specifically to that, about making sure we have programs not only by and for ethnically specific and racially specific and culturally specific agencies, but by and for agencies by people and for people with lived experience in the sex trades. Because that's something we heard regularly, no surprise to our team, at the community listening sessions and in the planning sessions, that in order to do this work well, it needs to be informed by and led by folks who have lived experience. But yes, thank you for that distinction, and that will be an important part of it. Great.
Right.
Yeah.
Are the applications for the review board still being accepted?
That is a great question we can also answer. We are not in the process of having fully fleshed it out, but we as a team still haven't talked specifically about what that panel is going to look like. But there will be folks from all of the categories that we talked about in the beginning when talking about the rating process.
But it's not too late for someone to apply, is what I'm asking.
I encourage folks to reach out to me.
Okay.
Yeah. The primary thing that we are looking for is do folks have a really good lens on the work we're trying to do, particularly in the context of what we have identified in this RFP, as well as don't have conflicts of interest with programs that might be applying. Yeah.
So I know in the listening sessions, there was talk of kind of this being looking for innovative solutions and kind of going from a place of filling those gaps that aren't already there. Can you speak a little bit more to what that would look like as an individual agency joining a collaborative that doesn't exist yet? Could you just go into a little more detail on that?
It's a great question. I don't have a lot more detail for you because essentially what we are asking is for folks to provide us with examples of what you might want to see, what you think those gaps are, to help us see that A, there's an understanding the collaborative will be working together to define those goals, and B, that you have an idea of how you would fill in those gaps and what you think the value add of your agency would be to the collaborative itself. So my response is you tell us. And if in reading through the narrative questions or in reading through the RFP that still is not clear, please reach out and let us know and we can respond to it at that time. Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
And so just 4 organizations are going to be chosen, is that right?
That is the goal of up to 4 agencies.
Up to 4, okay. Yes.
Anything else?
Remember, this is the time Allie can really answer questions on the fly, so this can be very conversational. If you all have something you want to just sound out with her, she can say, I can answer that. Anything's on the table.
Our fast access to Allie.
You will still have access to me. I will be providing answers to your questions, though, in a way that we are trying to make sure this is as equitable a process as possible, so that folks who might not know me, for example, that they will have the same access to information that any other program or provider would.
Okay, I got one more.
Yeah.
So I guess it's going back to the collaborative question. So I guess if I'm hearing that there's a need and a want, and I know that there is, to create a separate collaborative that's doing coordinated response. So OPS, for example, is part of the ASC, the Adult Survivor Collaborative. And so I guess I'm just trying to think of kind of going to Sydney, right? Sydney's question. Like, would it be, is it good to say, hey, partners who we already work with, let's talk about this together, or should we just like individually, because you're trying to diversify the services and fill the gaps that are not being served by like collaboratives that already exist?
So the part that I can answer to that is that the goal is to fill in gaps. The goal of this collaborative is to expand countywide and to make sure we're filling geographic gaps as well as service gaps. We understand that the collaborative itself will hopefully continue to build partnerships with the community because that's how we will do countywide work. But the goal, to your question, Angeli, is yes, to fill in some of those gaps.
So when it comes to the first one that you mentioned, which was the history of the organization, is that based at all off the people starting its history, or is it just only for that organization?
Are you talking about the scoring
Organizational
criteria?
background and experience. So
Yeah.
does the experience of the people starting the organization count as well in that one?
Yes, so any organization, talk about what you do. We're trying to get a good picture of who you are and what you are doing. And if, again, there is space that if these are not services that an agency is currently providing, or the agency is looking to expand on services, tell us about that. And the narrative questions will hopefully help frame that a little more and flesh it out. But in reading them, if you have further questions, let us know and we can help answer those as well. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about being like brand new, like our background, but
And I think
everyone involved has a lot of background, so that's why I was just wondering.
And there is a section too, and I didn't include this in eligibility. We do encourage small community-based agencies, grassroots programs, and folks who are really tapped in to apply for this RFP. And you will see that again. There's a lot of words to have on one slide. You'll see that again in the RFP. So that type of work is what we're hoping to support. So yes, tell us what it is you're trying to do and who you are. Adam.
And just to sort of piggyback on that, if you are a smaller agency and you maybe are unclear as to if that RFP is asking about or how to articulate that, I do think like it's a good idea to maybe reach out to the TA providers and just see, here's what I'm thinking about, and they're very good at sort of helping translate what the RFP is asking and then what place you all are at as an agency. And that's sort of their job, is to help be an interpreter of like, well, this is what King County is asking about, here's how we can help write that out. So I just want to give another plug, because we've noticed that in these RFPs, people kind of give that TA, that technical assistance slide, and they're like, okay, this is a lot of work, but they really are I think helpful at helping you articulate maybe your story or your perspective on something.
Well, we definitely qualify for getting those services. So we will.
Really, you do not have to.
Yeah, no, I'm really grateful that that's available for sure.
Yeah, Cindy.
So I was, when I was reviewing this, the way that the budget was structured was really open, and which is wonderful. There wasn't anything specified that I saw about FTE or about like a certain number of paid positions or dedicated staff. Sure. Is that completely open to the applicant to propose?
Yes, that is open to the applicant to propose. There is a section in the budget template for you to flesh out and give us more details about what it is that you are proposing.
Do you know if it'll get a reimbursement grant or?
That is a great question. I will get back to you on that. The intent is to have conversations with folks who are funded to see what's going to work best. Yeah.
Do you want just the cheapest access? Like, is it a good idea to just be like the most affordable agency?
Thank you. He is a plant, apparently. So Adam's question was, is it a good idea to be the most, air quotes, most affordable, or to be the least expensive applicant? No. We want to make sure that you are able to provide the services that we are requesting of you in a way that is sustainable and meaningful.
So it won't be a value of yours to say, well, what's the cheapest one, and that's the best one.
No, and the reason the budget is, there's part of the questions that get to not specifically what it is you're asking for, but about what your capacity is to manage. And if you have other questions about that, again, TA providers are great folks to reach out to, and you can reach out to our team and we will respond in the ZOOMGRANTS portal.
You may have already answered this, but are there, like, do legal services and legal advocacy count under the services covered in this grant?
Anything that is not defined in the grant is open for services.
Yeah, I think Human will delay, but feel free to ask any questions about that still.
Any other questions? Trying to create some silent space for reflection.
Could you show us the timeline again, just as we wrap up?
All right. Well, if you do have other questions for us, please reach out. Please send me an email. There is a contact section on the ZOOMGRANTS portal that will send me an email directly. So use that space. It will come to me. You will get a response that says, I will be responding to your question. You can expect a time frame. And then if you are already hooked into the ZOOMGRANTS portal, you will get a notification when those questions and answers are uploaded. Thank you all so much for your time. Again, this is my contact information. And this bidders conference that has been recorded will also be uploaded onto the VSHSL funding page. Please feel free to reach out to other community providers, send the information for folks who might not have been able to be here today, or folks who might not have yet heard about this investment. So please make sure to share my contact information. Thank you. Please take some coffee.